What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks into a live television interview and everything goes sideways? When the cameras are rolling, the audience is watching, and a simple question turns into something nobody saw coming. Before we get into what actually went down between Ryan Reynolds and Joy Behar on The View, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about celebrity interviews that go off the rails. Now let's dive into what became one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Ryan Reynolds walked onto the set of The View with that signature smile everyone knows. The audience erupted in applause as he made his way to the table where the hosts were seated. Joy Behar was front and center, ready to kick off the interview segment. The energy in the studio felt electric, the kind of buzz that comes with having a major star on a live show. "Ryan Reynolds, everybody," Joy announced as the applause continued. "Welcome back to The View. Thanks for having me," Ryan said, settling into his seat. "Always a pleasure to be here. So let's jump right in," Joy began, leaning forward slightly. "You've got a new project coming out, but before we talk about that, I want to address something that's been circulating online. There's been some conversation about comments you made regarding the entertainment industry and how it handles certain political topics. Do you remember what you said?" Ryan's expression shifted slightly, still pleasant, but with a hint of caution. "I've said a lot of things over the past few months, Joy. You're going to have to be more specific." "Well, you mentioned in an interview that Hollywood tends to preach to audiences rather than entertain them. That caused quite a stir. Some people felt you were dismissing important conversations." "I don't think I was dismissing anything," Ryan responded, his tone measured. "What I said was that audiences are smart enough to form their own opinions. They don't need to be lectured. There's a difference between telling stories that make people think and telling people what to think." Joy nodded, but there was something in her expression that suggested she wasn't entirely satisfied with that answer. "But don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to use their platform for good, to speak out on issues that matter?" "Of course," Ryan said, "but there's a way to do that without alienating half your audience. When you make entertainment that's more focused on pushing a specific agenda than telling a compelling story, people tune out. And I think we've seen that happen over and over again." One of the other hosts chimed in, trying to add some levity. "So you're saying we should all just stick to making people laugh?" Ryan smiled at that. "I'm saying there's an art to it. You can tackle serious subjects. You can make people think. But you have to respect your audience enough to let them come to their own conclusions. When you hit them over the head with your point of view, it stops being entertainment and starts being something else entirely." Joy jumped back in, her tone a bit sharper now. "But Ryan, some would argue that staying silent on important issues is its own form of taking a stance. That neutrality benefits those in power." "I never said anything about staying silent," Ryan countered, his voice calm but firm. "I'm talking about how you communicate. You can advocate for what you believe in without turning every project, every interview, every appearance into a sermon. People come to movies and TV shows to escape, to be moved, to be entertained. If they wanted a lecture, they'd go to a college campus." The audience reacted to that, some murmuring in agreement, others in disagreement. Joy's jaw tightened slightly. "So you think what we do here on The View is lecturing?" she asked, her voice taking on an edge. Ryan paused, clearly aware he was stepping into dangerous territory. "I think this show has its format, and that format works for your audience. But it's not what I do. I'm an actor. I tell stories, and I believe the best stories are the ones that trust the audience to be intelligent enough to draw their own conclusions." "That sounds like a cop-out," Joy said, not backing down. "It sounds like you want to have it both ways. You want to be seen as someone who cares about important issues, but you don't want to actually take a stand on anything controversial because it might hurt your box office numbers." The studio went quiet. The other hosts exchanged glances. Ryan's expression hardened slightly, though he maintained his composure. "That's not fair," he said quietly, "and it's not accurate." "Then what is accurate?" Joy pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more concerned with being likable than being principled." Ryan took a breath, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Joy, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here about what my job is. My job is to entertain people, to tell stories that resonate, that move people, that make them feel something. That doesn't mean I don't have principles. It doesn't mean I don't care about the world. It means I understand that not everyone wants to be preached to every time they turn on their television or go to a movie theater. But you have millions of followers." Joy continued, leaning in. "You have influence. Don't you think that comes with responsibility?" "Absolutely it does," Ryan replied, his voice steady, "and I take that responsibility seriously. But I also think there's a responsibility to respect different viewpoints, to understand that not everyone sees the world the same way, and that's okay. When we start demanding that everyone think exactly the same way we do, when we start attacking people for not being vocal enough about our specific causes, we're not having a conversation anymore. We're just yelling at each other." The tension in the room was palpable now. Joy wasn't smiling anymore, and neither was Ryan. The other hosts were exchanging nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. "So you think I'm yelling at you right now?" Joy asked, her tone sharp as a blade. "I think we're having a heated discussion," Ryan said carefully, "which is fine. Disagreement is healthy. But I also think you're trying to box me into a position that doesn't reflect what I actually believe. You're creating a false choice where either I agree with your exact worldview or I'm somehow morally deficient." "I'm trying to understand your position," Joy shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Because honestly, Ryan, it sounds like you want all the benefits of being a public figure without any of the responsibilities that come with it. You want the fame, the money, the platform. But when it comes time to actually use that platform for something meaningful, you hide behind this idea of neutrality." Ryan's jaw clenched. The audience was completely silent now, sensing that something significant was happening. "That's not what I'm doing," Ryan said, his voice low but intense. "And frankly, Joy, I think you know that. What you're doing right now is what's wrong with so much of public discourse today. You're not interested in having an actual conversation. You're interested in scoring points, in making me look bad, in painting me as some kind of coward because I won't endorse your specific political positions on demand." Joy's eyes widened. "Excuse me, I'm trying to have a conversation about responsibility and accountability." "No," Ryan said, shaking his head firmly. "You're trying to bully me into saying what you want me to say, and I'm not going to do it. I came here to talk about my work, about the projects I'm passionate about the stories I want to tell. Instead, you've turned this into an interrogation about my political beliefs and whether they align closely enough with yours." One of the other hosts finally spoke up, her voice tentative. "Maybe we can all just take a breath here and ... "No," Joy interrupted, holding up her hand. "I want to finish this conversation. Ryan, if you feel attacked right now, maybe that's because you're not comfortable defending your own positions. Maybe it's because deep down you know that staying silent when you have the platform you have is a form of complicity." Ryan let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Complicity? In what, exactly?" "In not agreeing with you 100%, in thinking that audiences deserve more credit than you're giving them, in believing that not every single moment of entertainment needs to be a political statement, in maintaining a status quo that benefits you while others suffer," Joy said, her voice cutting. "In prioritizing your comfort over justice." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ryan stared at Joy for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was controlled but unmistakably angry. "You don't know me," he said quietly. "You don't know what I do with my time, with my resources, with my platform when the cameras aren't rolling. You don't know what causes I support, what organizations I work with, what conversations I have with the people in my life. What you know is what I choose to share publicly. And I'm selective about that because I believe there's value in humility, in not turning every charitable act into a publicity opportunity. That's convenient," Joy said, her tone dripping with skepticism. "It's not convenient," Ryan countered, his voice rising now. "It's intentional. I don't need to perform my values for you or anyone else. I don't need to prove my worth by passing your purity test. And I certainly don't need to sit here and be accused of complicity in human suffering because I think audiences should be treated with respect rather than contempt." Joy leaned back slightly, her expression hard. "I never said I have contempt for audiences." "You don't have to say it," Ryan said. "It comes through in your premise. Your entire argument rests on the idea that people can't be trusted to think for themselves, that they need to be guided, that they need people like you to tell them what's right and what's wrong. That's not respect. That's condescension, dressed up as concern." The audience was riveted now, some people nodding, others looking shocked. The other hosts seemed frozen, unsure how to handle what had become a full-blown confrontation. "I think you're twisting my words," Joy said, but there was something defensive in her tone now. "I'm responding to what you've actually said," Ryan replied. "You've spent the last 10 minutes questioning my character, my integrity, and my values. You've accused me of caring more about money than principles, of being complicit in suffering, of hiding behind neutrality. Those aren't small accusations, Joy. Those are serious charges. And you've made them on live television without any real basis beyond the fact that I won't toe your ideological line. I asked you questions," Joy insisted. "That's my job. Your job is to interview guests," Ryan said, "not to ambush them, not to put them on trial, and certainly not to make sweeping judgments about their character based on whether they agree with your politics." Joy's face was flushed now. "I think you're being overly sensitive." Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And I think you're being incredibly dismissive. You've made this personal, Joy. You've made this about me as a person rather than about any actual substantive issue. And now that I'm pushing back, you're trying to frame it as me being unable to handle criticism. Can you?" Joy challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, you came on this show expecting softballs and now you're upset that you're being asked to defend your positions." Ryan leaned forward, his eyes locked on Joy's. "I can handle criticism just fine, Joy. What I can't handle is dishonesty. You're not criticizing my positions. You're criticizing positions you've assigned to me. You've built this entire argument on assumptions about who I am and what I believe. And every time I try to correct those assumptions, you double down. Instead of listening, I'm listening, Joy said, but her body language suggested otherwise. Her arms were crossed, her expression set. Are you? Ryan challenged, because it seems to me like you came into this interview with a narrative already written in your head. Ryan Reynolds, the actor who doesn't want to get political because it might hurt his career. Ryan Reynolds, the guy who plays it safe. Ryan Reynolds, the entertainer who cares more about being liked than being right. Am I close? Joy didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Ryan continued, his voice measured but firm. Here's what you're missing. I do care about being liked. I'm not going to apologize for that, but not because I'm shallow or because I'm afraid of controversy. I care about being liked because connection matters, because finding common ground matters, because the moment you write off everyone who doesn't think exactly like you do, you've lost the ability to actually change anyone's mind or heart. That sounds like an excuse to avoid taking hard stances, Joy said. No, Ryan said, his voice hardening. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like understanding that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. It sounds like recognizing that people are more likely to listen to you if you don't start every conversation by insulting them or questioning their character. One of the other hosts tried again to interject. I think both of you are making valid points here, and maybe we can find some middle ground. There is no middle ground with some people, Joy said, her eyes still on Ryan. There are things that are right and things that are wrong, and sometimes you have to pick a side. I agree, Ryan said, surprising her. There are absolutes in this world. There are moral truths. But here's what I've learned. Joy, the people who are most certain they're right, the people who are most aggressive about enforcing their worldview on others, they're not always the good guys. Sometimes the people who are absolutely certain they're on the right side of history are the same people who create the most damage. Joy's expression darkened. Are you comparing me to some kind of authoritarian? I'm saying certainty can be dangerous. Ryan replied, I'm saying that when you believe so strongly in your own righteousness that you can't even conceive of being wrong, you stop listening, you stop learning, you stop growing, and you start treating everyone who disagrees with you as an enemy, rather than as a human being with different experiences and perspectives. So we should just accept all perspectives as equally valid. Joy asked, her tone mocking, we should give equal weight to bigotry and tolerance. 2. Truth and lies. That's not what I said, Ryan shot back, his frustration evident now. And you know it's not what I said. What I'm talking about is basic human decency. What I'm talking about is the ability to disagree without demonizing. What I'm talking about is recognizing that most people, even people who think differently than you do, are trying their best to navigate a complicated world. Some people's best isn't good enough, Joy said coldly. Ryan stared at her for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quiet but intense. And who decides that? Joy, do you get to be the arbiter of whose efforts are sufficient? Do you get to sit in judgment of everyone who doesn't meet your standards? Someone has to hold people accountable, Joy said. Accountable for what? Ryan asked, his voice rising. For not performing their politics the way you want them to. For not being vocal enough. For not using their platform in the exact way you think they should. That's not accountability, Joy. That's control. That's you deciding that your way is the only way and everyone else is wrong. The studio was completely silent now. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, afraid to miss a second of what was unfolding. Joy's voice was tight when she spoke. I think you're being incredibly defensive right now. I think I have every right to be defensive, Ryan countered. You've spent the last 15 minutes attacking me on national television. You've questioned my integrity, my values, and my character. You've accused me of complicity in suffering. You've suggested I'm a coward who hides behind neutrality. And all of this because I had the audacity to suggest that maybe we should trust audiences to think for themselves. So yes, Joy, I'm defensive. I'm defending myself against baseless accusations from someone who clearly had no interest in a fair conversation from the moment I sat down. One of the other hosts finally spoke up more forcefully. Okay, I think we need to move on to another topic. This has gotten very heated, and maybe we all need to just take a breath. No, Ryan said firmly, his eyes still on Joy. I want to finish this, because I think what's happening right here, right now, is exactly what's wrong with so much of our public discourse. Someone asks a question, and if they don't like your answer, they don't engage with what you actually said. They attack your character. They question your motives. They try to shame you into compliance. And if you push back, if you defend yourself, they accuse you of being defensive or sensitive or unable to handle criticism. Joy's jaw was set. I asked you legitimate questions about your responsibility as a public figure. You made accusations, Ryan corrected. There's a difference. A question seeks information. An accusation assumes guilt. And everything you've said to me today has been rooted in the assumption that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm failing in some moral obligation, that I'm not good enough by your standards. Maybe you're not, Joy said, and the words landed like a slap. Ryan went very still. The audience gasped audibly. The other hosts looked genuinely shocked. Wow, Ryan said softly. There it is. The mask comes off. This was never about having a conversation. This was never about understanding my perspective. This was about you deciding I don't measure up and using your platform to tear me down. I'm holding you accountable, Joy insisted, but her voice wavered slightly. No, Ryan said, standing up now. The sudden movement startled everyone. You're bullying me, and you're doing it on live television because you know I'm supposed to just sit here and take it. Because if I fight back too hard, I'm the bad guy. Well, I'm done playing that game, Joy. I came here in good faith. I came here ready to have a real conversation. But you don't want a conversation. You want submission, and I'm not going to give you that. The studio was in complete chaos now. The other hosts were talking over each other, trying to restore some sense of order. The audience was buzzing with reactions, some people standing, others sitting in stunned silence. But Ryan remained focused on Joy, who was still seated, her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been surprise. Sit down, Joy said, trying to regain control of the situation. We're not finished here. Actually, we are, Ryan said, his voice calm now but unyielding. Because I'm not going to continue to participate in this. I'm not going to sit here while you use your position to attack me and then act like you're just doing your job. This isn't journalism, Joy. This isn't even advocacy. This is something else entirely. You don't get to tell me what my job is, Joy said, her voice sharp. And you don't get to tell me what my values are. Ryan countered immediately. You don't get to decide whether I'm good enough. You don't get to put me on trial and act as judge, jury, and executioner all at once. That's not how this works. One of the other hosts finally managed to speak. Ryan, please, let's just take a moment to calm down, and maybe we can have a more productive conversation. Ryan turned to her, and his expression softened slightly. I appreciate that. I do. But there's no productive conversation to be had here. Joy made that clear from the beginning. This was never about dialogue. This was about making an example out of me because I don't fit into the box she wants me in. Joy stood up now too, matching his posture. You're being ridiculous. I asked you hard questions. That's what we do on this show. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't agree to come on shows like this. Hard questions. Ryan repeated, and there was genuine disbelief in his voice. Joy, you accused me of being complicit in human suffering. You questioned whether I have any principles at all. You suggested I care more about money than morality. Those aren't hard questions. Those are character assassinations. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly why this conversation is pointless. I think you're overreacting, Joy said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. I'm reacting proportionally to being attacked on national television, Ryan said, and I think the audience can decide for themselves whether my reaction is justified. They're smart enough to make that call, even if you don't think they are. That landed. Joy's face flushed, and for a moment, she seemed at a loss for words. Ryan continued, his voice steadier now. Here's what I hope people take away from this. When someone disagrees with you, when someone has a different perspective, when someone doesn't want to engage with politics the exact way you think they should, that doesn't make them your enemy. That doesn't make them immoral. That doesn't mean they don't care. It just means they're different from you. And in a free society, that should be okay. It should be celebrated. But instead, we've created this culture where difference is treated as deficiency, where nuance is treated as cowardice, where anything less than total agreement is seen as betrayal. One of the other hosts nodded slowly. I think that's actually a really important point, Ryan. It is, Ryan said, glancing at her briefly before returning his attention to Joy. And it's a point that's being lost in this rush to enforce ideological conformity. We're turning on people who are 90% aligned with us because they're not 100% aligned. We're creating purity tests that nobody can pass. And in the process, we're making it impossible to build the kind of broad coalitions we need to actually create change. Joy crossed her arms. So your solution is to just avoid taking any firm positions at all. Ryan sighed, and there was something almost sad in the sound. My solution is to treat people with respect, to listen more than I talk, to understand that I don't have all the answers, to recognize that the world is complicated and most issues don't have simple solutions, to trust that people are generally doing their best, and to stop treating every disagreement as a moral failing. Is that really so radical, Joy? For the first time since the confrontation began, Joy seemed genuinely uncertain. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I think sometimes you have to take a stand. I agree, Ryan said quietly. I absolutely agree. But I also think you have to know when you're taking a stand and when you're just attacking someone who doesn't deserve it. And today, Joy, you attacked me. You attacked my character, my integrity, and my values. And for what? Because I think audiences should be trusted to think for themselves. Because I don't want to turn every piece of entertainment into a political manifesto. Because I believe in treating people with different viewpoints with respect and dignity. The silence that followed was deafening. Joy looked at Ryan, and for just a moment, something shifted in her expression. But then it hardened again. I think we'll have to agree to disagree. she said stiffly. Ryan nodded slowly. I can live with that, can you? Joy didn't answer. Ryan looked at the other hosts, then at the audience. I want to thank you all for watching this. I know it got uncomfortable. I know it wasn't what anyone expected, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we need more uncomfortable conversations. Maybe we need to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. Maybe we need to be honest about the fact that we're struggling to talk to each other, to listen to each other, to see each other as human beings rather than as political opponents. He turned back to Joy one last time. I hope you think about what happened here today. I hope you ask yourself whether this was really the conversation you wanted to have, or whether maybe, just maybe, you let your assumptions get in the way of actually hearing what I was saying. Because I promise you, Joy, I came here with an open mind. I'm leaving with the same values I walked in with, but with a much clearer understanding of why our public discourse is so broken. With that, Ryan walked off the set. The cameras followed him for a moment, then cut back to the hosts, who sat in stunned silence. Joy was staring at the spot where Ryan had been standing, her expression unreadable. The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. Finally, one of them spoke. Well, that was certainly unexpected. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of today's show. The screen faded to commercial, but the impact of what had just happened was impossible to ignore. In living rooms across the country, people were talking about what they'd just witnessed. Social media was exploding with reactions. And somewhere, Ryan Reynolds was probably taking a very deep breath and wondering what would come next. So what do you think about this confrontation? Was Ryan right to push back the way he did, or should he have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more breakdowns of the biggest moments in entertainment. This is the kind of real, unscripted television that reminds us why live shows can be so compelling and so unpredictable.